Thank you very much. Mr. Vice President, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, I am honored to address the Council today in my capacity as Special Rapporteur on contemporary forms of slavery. I look back on a busy year where I continue to engage with a number of governmental and non-governmental stakeholders, including victims and survivors of contemporary forms of slavery. In terms of country visits, I went to Canada and Côte d'Ivoire last year, and I'm due to visit Australia in November this year, and Serbia next year. I wish to thank those member states which issued invitations and encourage others to do the same. In 2 years' time, we will celebrate the centennial of the Slavery Convention 1926, and the international community has also pledged to end contemporary forms of slavery as per Sustainable Development Goal 8, Target 8.7. However, I remained gravely concerned that these gross violations of human rights are on the increase due to reasons such as the outbreak or continuation of tragic armed conflicts, natural disasters, climate change, unprecedented disruptions to employment and education, extreme poverty, forced and unsafe migration, as well as a rise in gender-based violence. I therefore strongly urged all governments and the international community to reaffirm their commitment to tackle contemporary forms of slavery and its key causes and intensify their efforts in this regard. I now wish to turn to the findings of my visits to Canada and Côte d'Ivoire last year. I would like to start by thanking numerous governmental and non-governmental stakeholders for their constructive engagement and cooperation during my visits. With regard to Canada, I would like to emphasize that it has solid legal and institutional frameworks and progressive initiatives to combat contemporary forms of slavery. One notable example is Canada's efforts to prevent these practices in supply chains and strengthen human rights due diligence through the introduction of new legislation and policies and the establishment of Canadian Ombudsperson for Responsible Enterprise. I also welcome the multi-stakeholder approach to tackle contemporary forms of slavery adopted at local, territorial, or provincial, as well as federal levels. However, there are challenges which must be addressed fully. These include limited applicability of human rights due diligence in practice, insufficient enforcement powers and resources, the exploitative nature of some work streams under the Temporary Foreign Worker Program, and interjurisdictional issues at territorial or provincial and federal levels which may affect the promotion of a whole-of-government approach. Canada also should do more to address its colonial legacy, inequality and discrimination experienced by marginalized groups such as indigenous peoples, racialized groups including people of African descent, persons with disabilities, currently and formerly incarcerated persons, and sex workers, as these factors continue to limit their access to quality education, decent work, adequate and affordable housing, and essential public services, which in turn puts them at the higher risk of being victimized in contemporary forms of slavery. Turning now to an overview of my visit to Côte d'Ivoire, the country has made significant progress in ending contemporary forms of slavery in the recent past. In particular, I would like to acknowledge its ongoing efforts to end child labor in various sectors. In this regard, I had an opportunity to witness important progress in the cacao sector during my visit, which holds strategic importance to Côte d'Ivoire's national economy. Local and national authorities seem to work closely and collaboratively with relevant stakeholders such as businesses, trade unions, civil society, and international actors in order to eliminate child labor. Despite these positive steps, I urge Côte d'Ivoire to further intensify its efforts to eradicate contemporary forms of slavery. I observed the persistence of child labor, including its worst forms in sectors such as artisanal gold mining, agriculture, and domestic work. It is imperative that the government steps up inspections and brings perpetrators and others who benefit from criminal businesses to justice. I am also concerned that the current government initiatives may not fully reach out to adult forced labor, which is reported in various sectors. In addition, child, early, and forced marriages in Côte d'Ivoire remain serious, with a notable prevalence in the northern regions. Furthermore, human trafficking of foreign nationals into Côte d'Ivoire, as well as of Ivorian nationals abroad, requires urgent attention. Mr. Vice President, I now wish to summarize the findings of my new thematic report on contemporary forms of slavery as affecting currently and formerly incarcerated individuals, with sincere gratitude to those who have provided input. Although work during incarceration per se is not in strict violation of the existing international labor and human rights standards, certain conditions must be met, such as conviction in a court of law which complies with the existing human rights standards, supervision by public authorities, and the safeguards for those working for private businesses and entities. In addition, imposition of labor as a means of, among others, political coercion, education, as well as a punishment for holding or expressing political views is prohibited. International human rights law also recognizes the rights of incarcerated individuals to access decent work, and I was encouraged to learn some positive examples implemented by various states, including the requirement of informed consent, entitlement to social security and other benefits, the existence of written contracts setting out fair working conditions, and financial support to the family of incarcerated persons. However, I am gravely concerned that decent work is not guaranteed sufficiently in all regions of the world. There is generally a lack of meaningful work opportunities, and wages are by and large insufficient, as incarcerated individuals are not able to pay for necessities, support their loved ones outside, and save for their future in most cases. The working conditions also raise serious concerns, as long working hours without breaks or rest days, and limited access to occupational health and safety protection, medical facilities, and social security benefits have been reported widely. Further, state-imposed forced labor in contravention of the ILO Abolition of Forced Labor Convention, as well as sexual exploitation, harassment, and violence against incarcerated individuals remain serious in various parts of the world. In order to promote successful rehabilitation and reintegration after incarceration, provision of effective educational and vocational training is essential. I am encouraged by a number of good initiatives implemented in close cooperation with governmental and non-governmental service providers, but once again, a lack of meaningful training or educational opportunities within correctional facilities has been reported widely. Similarly, a large number of formerly incarcerated people continue to suffer from ongoing discrimination and stigmatization, which in effect limit their access to education, decent work, adequate and affordable housing, and other public services, thereby increasing their risk of recidivism and exploitation in contemporary forms of slavery, despite examples of good practice such as the use of spent convictions, financial inclusion, and enhanced access to employment observed globally. Intersecting forms of discrimination must also be recognized clearly and addressed effectively, as certain groups, such as indigenous peoples, those belonging to minority groups, persons of diverse sexual orientations and/or gender identities, younger or older persons, and persons with disabilities continue to experience discrimination with regard to rehabilitation and reintegration. Excellencies and distinguished delegates, I call on you to recognize incarcerated persons engaging in labor as workers and to protect their labor rights equally. Additionally, all instances of labor and sexual exploitation must be addressed more effectively through adequate training, oversight, strengthened accountability, and access to justice and remedies for victims. I also wish to stress that proactive investment by states and robust partnerships with other stakeholders are essential for successful rehabilitation and reintegration of incarcerated persons and for the prevention of recidivism and their exploitation in contemporary forms of slavery. In so doing, states must intensify their efforts to eliminate intersecting forms of discrimination and stigmatization, thereby creating a level playing field for all. Mr. Vice President, I look forward to continuing constructive engagement with Member States, victims and survivors of contemporary forms of slavery, civil society, businesses, national human rights institutions, workers' organizations, regional and international organizations, and other stakeholders in working towards the elimination of contemporary forms of slavery. Together, we can build a more just and equitable world for all. Thank you for your attention, and I look forward to an engaging dialogue with you.